Hello, and welcome back to the James Dev Vlog Show, starring me, James. Now that's a terrifying prospect, isn't it? Right, so what did I get done yesterday? Unfortunately not as much as I wanted to get done yesterday. I ran into a couple of issues, but I will try and describe what we've got done. Okay, if we click play, Unity decides to play the game, which is always a good question. You might notice that nothing much looks different. This is totally intentional. So what we have done is, if you will notice, we now have these bullet clone objects down the side here. When we start, they're all greyed out. If we fire, they get highlighted. So basically this is a pool of 10 bullet objects, which are all set to inactive initially, and then as we fire, or as the enemy fires, they get activated. So let's go through that. So I've created this game object manager over here with the game object manager script, which is this. So this has a pool of bullets, which is just a list. There is a better way of doing this involving keys and dictionaries, but I was going for simple and straightforward. So when this script wakes up, we actually are creating a singleton. I might go through this in a bit of depth, because I've noticed there's quite a lot of confusion about singletons on YouTube. So that might be an interesting prospect. But we create our singleton, we create our list, we instantiate our 10 bullets, we deactivate the bullets, and then we add them to our list. Now we've got this new function called getBullet, and basically what this is doing is it goes through our list of bullets and tries and finds some inactive bullets. Once it's found an inactive bullet, it returns that bullet object. If it can't find an inactive bullet, it instantiates a new bullet and sets its active state to false and adds it to the list again. This means we have an increasing list of bullets that we can use as a kind of cache. Now obviously if there's none available, we can't just have it not fire, so we create new ones and add it to our cache. But essentially what should happen is you'll end up with a set amount of bullets that works for the game at that moment, and then you never have to instantiate an object. I think I explained last week that instantiation is kind of costly. Now we've had to change a few things in order to make this work. So our fire routine, as you might remember, was initially instantiating the bullet. Now it's using my game object manager singleton to just get a bullet from my pool of bullets, and then it changes the properties on this bullet to what they're supposed to be. So sets its position, sets its layer, and then it sets it to active, which means it's actually in the game now, and can be viewed and can do damage. I think we also had some issues involving this bullet controller, which I'm going to have to basically refactor, because currently, we've got our bullet health. This should really be a public parameter on the class, and then I'd have a private one, which was basically the current health of the bullet, and then when we need to reset the bullet object, we can just take the actual health and assign it to our current health, which will fix a lot of issues I've been having. Because essentially with us pulling from this game object manager pool, we now have to reset everything to what it's supposed to be. So that can cause some complications, but it should be good going forward. One of the things we do need to do is start moving the actual enemies into this game object manager as well, so we're not instantiating those, it's just a list of enemies that are set to inactive, and then as we need new ones we create a new one or pull it from our object pool and reset its sort of parameters so it functions correctly. Now, I've mentioned this about a singleton. Now, I've noticed a lot of confusion about singletons on YouTube and what exactly are singletons, so I might go through this in a bit of detail. So let's see. So basically we have our classes, and then we have our objects, or we can call these instances. Now I'm going to use an analogy that's going to break fairly rapidly, but a class is a bit like a recipe. So we might have like a recipe for cake, and then we've got our object, which is when you take that recipe and actually bake yourself a nice cake. Yay, cake. Right, now, so when we declare a new object, or instantiate one in this case, what happens is we're taking a recipe and then we're making an instance of that, which would be the cake in this case. So we take a recipe and then we get cake. Right, now a singleton. What exactly is a singleton? So a singleton is a class that can only be instantiated once. Now this can seem a bit confusing, I get that, but so we have this game object manager class here, and then we have this, when I find it, and then we have this static property called manager. Now our static property, by declaring this as static, what it means is this is available on the class and not the object. So any object that tried to access this static property would basically change it across every single instance of the class. So if we say declared chocolate on our cake as static, and then we ate that chocolate, I told you this analogy would break down so quickly, then by eating the chocolate we'd be taking the chocolate off every single cake we've ever built, ever made, which obviously in most cases you don't want, but there are some good uses for this. So for instance this game object manager class, now I don't want to have to re-instantiate this game object manager every time I want to access an object. In fact, I couldn't, and what I don't want to have to do is then go through every object in here that needs to access this game object manager and basically pull in a reference to it. So what I do instead is I make this static variable on the game object manager, and then when this class is created, it instantiates one object instance on this static variable, which can then access all different things, all its own properties. But then if we go into the gun controller class, for instance, the gun controller class, yeah. So rather than me accessing this through get component, I'm just hard referencing the game object manager. I get the manager instance, which is the instance of this class that we only have one of, and then I get the bullet from that. And this is very useful for like pooling resources and sometimes for settings, although I'd probably recommend doing it a different way. Anyway, that's my attempt at explaining a singleton. I've probably done more to confuse everyone than anything else, but I thought I'd give it a go. The only other thing I could think of talking about was one true bracket notation, which, since I'm not into flame wars on the internet, we will stay away from that topic. Although technically this is wrong. I'm just saying. It should be like that. That's the correct way to do it. C# is wrong. Anyway, wish you all well, and till next time, bye!